everyone, this is Tobias Forge from Ghost, and I am currently on the spot. My second favorite band. That should be easier than my absolute favorite band because I really don't have one favorite band. It sort of fluctuates between 10 different ones. So I go in through phases where I nerd out completely about bands. And every time I see something about Metallica, hear a song or anything, and all of a sudden I see Cliff 'Em All, and then I see like live from Basel 1993, and then I see live in Quebec 1986, and then I see live at the Metro in Chicago 1983, and then it just like all of a sudden I've sat around for a whole day just watching Metallica videos. And the same thing with Rolling Stones, or I've gone through so many periods of complete worship of Pink Floyd and The Doors and Morbid Angel and Creator and Dead Kennedys. I like a lot of different ones, and I like different styles of music, even though it's like everything is sort of rock leaning, I guess, especially when it comes to obsession. I mean, I can obsess about songs, I can obsess about certain records that might necessarily not be of a band that I obsess about, if that makes sense. Meaning I can love a record with all my heart, but I don't really care about who played on it, whereas some bands are just very magnetizing and mystifying. Therefore I gravitate towards its entire DNA, everything from 60s pop rock to punk and a lot of metal and death metal and black metal. I think that Ghost is very much constructed, sounds very premeditated and sort of medically mathematic, but I would say that it's created from a point of view for people like myself that do obsess over things and that do go into detail and search and fantasize. That was the entire idea with what ended up being anonymity, and the idea of masking the band. A way to try to recreate the clandestine sort of backdrop that was behind all the artists that I liked when I was a kid and teenager, because that was before internet, essentially. You had to dig. I mean, when I was 8 years old and I was an obsessive Rolling Stones fan, even the biggest bands in the world didn't really have a ton of material that you could dive into. I think from a theological point of view, I think that but I don't hear it very often. I think that most people that at least are attracted to us, I don't know much about the people that are repulsed by the band in the sense that it doesn't really manifest itself very clearly. That means that we don't have a ton of protesters outside our shows, and we never really have had that, which is I'm very happy about, because I've never, as much as I've been sort of a provocative child and effect-seeking teenager, as a professional I don't really set out to provoke people necessarily for the sake of provocation. I don't really know if it's an issue anymore, but to the extent that I'm assuming that some people would judge us upon just seeing a poster, I think that it's a very easy way out if you're a religious sort of Bible thumper to think that we are singing about God as the Christian God, sort of, and we would then criticize that, embracing the devil being a subterranean horned beast. And I think that that's a very unnuanced way of seeing the world, and I think that that is probably a misconception about the band and what it's about, because essentially what the lyrics are about is about mankind and the ideas of man and the behavior of man and so forth. With the risk of sounding like, there's this character in Coming to America that they meet in the bar who's like, yeah, I want to be an actor, and I want to write my own script, and I want to direct my own TV show, and I want to have a radio show, and I'm going to be an artist. With the risk of sounding exactly like her. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas, and some of them, especially with time and having spent time in the entertainment sphere, and having friends who are very active within the film industry and TV industry, I am entertaining and have my ideas entertained by some of them, possibly doing something that would be completely outside Ghost, had nothing to do with this, but that is a little bit more of a cinematic form or something like that. Exactly what it is, I can't really go into, but yeah, I have a ton of ideas. I'm very inspired, let's put it that way. I've always been very interested in cinema. Unfortunately, that comes with a great slew of criticism when I see anything really. But let me be clear. My taste is not just highbrow, and I only need to see like the Criterion collection of. And I think a lot of films that people love and hold very dearly for intellectual reasons suck sometime, and I can like completely treasure something that would be, held with lower regard as being trashy or something. But I'm very critical, and I've always been, because we've always watched a lot of films in my family, and my father is essentially a photographer. And when he's retired now, but he used to be working as a freelance photographer, and was working in film, TV, documentary, all that, to absolute just news broadcasts. So at an early age, I was not only exposed to that, but I was also there was sort of a little narrative when I was watching something that would be like, oh, can you see the microphone coming down there? Oh yeah. And then all of a sudden I couldn't stop seeing films with the microphone coming down, within frame. Nowadays kids, you might not notice that anymore because they have magically erased those, but back especially a lot of films in the 70s had you see a little black thing just coming up on the top of the screen, and that's usually the microphone. And then you can sometimes see the actors like do that. 9 to 5 is one good example of that. Lily Tomlin is standing in the office talking, and you can see the microphone coming down, and she's like, ah! You see shadows there, here and there, and I noticed early how people had their hair differently from different angles, and how they were holding like the cup in one hand, and all of a sudden she's holding it here, and that was my childhood, and all of a sudden I was starting to feel very, very intrigued by seeing films. I can completely dive in to the imaginary bit of it as well. But it's definitely an interesting thing seeing films like that, because if you're interested in film, that is. But I've always been, and I always will be, and because I'm a creative person, and because I'm so interested in it, and hopefully one day, knock wood, maybe there's a way to explore that a little. But I mean, obviously, I don't kid myself into thinking that I am neither like a big director or an actor that could do just anything. What I do and what I'm known for, and what I probably will always be known to have excelled within, is doing Ghost. So bear with me on that one. But one of my favorite films of all time is an Italian movie called Brutti, sporchi e cattivi. Ugly, shitty, and mean. In Swedish it's called Fula, skitiga, elaka. I think that in some aspects, I guess it could be sort of held or looked upon as a highbrow movie, even though it's extreme. What it depicts and what it's about is very trashy. It's made by Ettore Scola, and it's done in the mid-70s. I don't know if it was ever a big blockbuster in the mid-70s, but it was reintroduced to Swedish cinema in the mid-late 80s. And around the same time, they showed it on TV in Sweden. Swedish television, especially in the 80s, was very, very, for lack of a better word, good. It was phenomenal, even, because it was state-run, so they had a lot of money, and every night as far as I remember, like to my recollection at least, they could show anything. So it was anything from, especially in the later 80s and the beginning of the 90s when we started having cable, it was just an amazing time to be a kid and an amazing time to be interested in film, because on the Swedish television, SVT 1 and 2 channels, they could show Scarface and Godfather. And then after that, if you just flipped to the next channel, it could be Phantasm and Weird Science. That could be a Thursday night. That was my childhood. That was what I watched. Like, anything. And I loved it. My mother is a very nice woman. And she let me, and I mean, she usually fell asleep. And I had my own room, and I had my own TV in there, with an own VCR as well. A lot of my school went to shit because I was up all night watching films on TV and VCR. Hey, let's return to Ugly, Shitty, and Mean at Torre Scola. It was shown on TV in '89 or something like that, and I saw it, and it just blew my mind. The basic story is a family lives on in a mountain of trash, sort of favela, outside of Rome in the beginning of the 70s, and they treat each other like absolute shit, and it's so their lives are horrible. But it's a fantastic, funny film about mankind. And very entertaining, really cool film. That's probably one of my one of my favorite highbrow but also trash films. Once I saw a clip of James Hetfield attempting to play the riff in Cerise. That was cool. I mean, that for me, I guess is like circle full. Like, it's like, wow, that's fantastic. I mean, it would be funny if like the Shags made a reunion and played Secular Haze or something. Hey everyone, this is Tobias Forge from Ghost. For more videos of your favorite artists, please subscribe to APTV.